Okay, wanted to say a couple of things on where I stand on the idea of a universal language or a single international language. First off, the question comes up once in a while, like various forms of what will be the language of the future, or what will be the world language, or what will be the international language. The international language, like there's only going to be one. Well, we already have several. French is an international language. Spanish is an international language. English is an international language. Um, oh, Chinese, written Chinese, is a very international language. And now, I should make a clarification there because there are languages such as Japanese and Korean which have adopted Chinese writing. They don't use all of it, but they use some of it. And in some cases, they use a modified form of some of it, but it's still Chinese. And just like English spoken with a Scottish accent or an American accent or a British accent or an Australian accent or an African accent is still English, Chinese written with slight modifications to adapt it to the linguistic properties of Japanese or Korean or something to that effect is still Chinese written language. And so we do have multiple international languages. I would go as far as to say that American Sign Language, even though it's named American Sign Language, is an international language. I found that it was very easy to adapt my knowledge of American Sign Language to be able to speak to deaf people at a deaf school that I came across in South America, where the spoken language in the area is Spanish, and the language that they speak in signs has some slight variations based on the connection to the spoken Spanish language in some of the same words or phrases that would have adaptation to the spoken English language here in the United States, where I live right now. So I would have to qualify sign language, American Sign Language, also as an international language because I do know that it is spoken by deaf communities in various parts of the world, not just here in the United States. It is not a universally accepted international language, but then again, no language is universally accepted in that sense. I actually think that some sort of sign language, and I don't want to say specifically, a particular sign language, depends on where in the world a person is and uh, what seems most useful there. But I think some sort of sign language should be taught to all children at a very young age, hearing or otherwise. It is very handy to have the ability to say something, say for example, across a lot of noise where you can't hear each other, or on the other side of a glass window, again, where sound may not penetrate well. It can be very handy to have a sign language, and it also introduces linguistic concepts that are handy to have the ability to process, to have the brain parts for, so to speak. So I've always thought that that was a good idea. Uh, where the Pont language is intended to go is to bridge languages. Unfortunately, I don't know how it can help in bridging the the connection between spoken language and signed languages. It is designed as a spoken and a written language. I don't have a sign language form of it. Hopefully, someday someone will find a way to adapt such a thing. Right now, sign languages are the reality of it, mainly used by deaf people and mainly used in deaf communities or deaf schools, or of course by deaf people who have friends or relatives who have taken the time and went through the trouble to learn to be able to speak sign language for them. More often than not, a deaf person has to learn to communicate in a spoken language. It's just the way things tend to work. And I'm sure most hearing people can probably imagine the difficulty involved in a completely deaf person having to learn to speak their language and read their lips to figure out what they're saying. I mean, reading lips is not a precise process. And as a matter of fact, I highly doubt that anybody watching this video will actually be able to read my lips, because I don't think the frame rate's going to be high enough. So this would be completely inaccessible to a person who lip reads. If anybody out there is actually watching this and reading my lips, please correct me. Tell me I'm wrong. But the idea behind Pont is not to eradicate lesser known languages or to become the universal language or the international language. If we are going to have a single international language with an elevated status as such, I think it should be Esperanto, simply because of the fact that a lot of languages have been tried over the years as an intentional auxiliary language, and Esperanto is the only one that has made sufficient progress to demonstrate that it actually has the capacity to function as such. And no, when I say capacity to function as such, I don't mean ability to be used by someone, but rather it has demonstrated that people can accept it, coming from various language backgrounds and various cultural backgrounds, and embrace it and choose it as an international auxiliary language, and millions of people have done so. It's now in a world with as many people as we've got in it, that's still a very small number of people. But this is actually why this Esperanto being what it is actually why I have based Pont to a large extent on Esperanto. And someone who is fluent in the Pont language, in any dialect of Pont, will have an advantage in learning to speak any other dialect of Pont, and also will have a distinct advantage in learning to speak Esperanto, which already is an easy language to learn, even without that advantage. So hopefully, in the long run, Esperanto will become what it was intended to, and have Pont's help in doing so, and the world can enjoy a nearly universal auxiliary language. Now, when I say nearly universal, I don't think it will ever be the case that every country, every person will want to learn Esperanto and want to have Esperanto as an auxiliary language or a second language, any more than every one of them wants to learn English, or every one of them wants to learn Spanish, or every one of them wants to learn French, or for that matter Latin, which at one time was very international and ended up becoming basically a dead language. There are so many languages that could have the capacity to be spoken by everyone, but unfortunately, the only way that I could imagine that happening is if everyone meant one person. If our whole population was wiped out except for one person, everybody left would be speaking one language, or however many languages that person spoke. Not exactly a solution. So, what does it mean to have a single worldwide language at the exclusion of all others? Let me make this very clear. In the English language, there are names for a great many different colors. Now, I'm going to use that as a simple example because if you ask someone how many colors there are in the rainbow, you'll get various answers. Most people will probably say 6 or 7, but the rainbow is not a set of a very small finite number of colors. It is a range of hues, um, ranging from the lower end of the visible spectrum on the red side, the near infrared, to the higher end of the visible spectrum on the violet side, the near ultraviolet, and everything in between. And if we were to decide that there were just too many color names and we needed to simplify things by narrowing them all down, we could say, well, okay, let's just say from now on we'll call all colors by the names red, orange, yellow, green, blue, purple, brown, black, white. If we did that, we would be throwing away a huge value of diversity. And yeah, there are obscure color names out there that most people will never learn. But there are industries that make use of such obscure color names on a daily basis. So they do have a purpose, they do serve a valuable function. Likewise, there are things that I can say in Spanish that I simply can't say in English, and vice versa. There are things I can say in English that I simply can't say in Spanish. Now, it's not that my English is not fluent. It's not that my Spanish lacks fluidity. Not even sure what the right word is for that. There I go. Okay, there's an example. I'm trying to say something. The thought is in my head, and I don't know the correct way to say exactly what I want to say. I I could try to invent a word for it, but I can't think of one. And what people end up doing in such cases is saying things the best they can. As a matter of fact, we get so used to that we really generally don't even realize we're doing it. It's a shame as it is that so much is lost in communication because of the fact that our languages are insufficient to be able to say everything that we think. It would be so much more of a shame if all of the linguistic diversity out there that allows things to be expressed by other people that we are not able to express was also lost. Instead, I would like to see a sharing of such information so that the most valuable of it, that which is the most commonly valuable, can be shared by the most people. And that which is valued by the smallest groups of people will not be lost, but can still be used by those groups, used by those people that have use of it, of whatever it might happen to be. And I think the Pont language has the potential to help that happen, to bridge the gap between languages and allow us to begin sharing information between languages at a pace that was never before possible, and acquiring new languages at a pace that was never before possible. How well this will work out, I'll have to wait and see. Hopefully there will be at least a few people out there who will like the idea and be enthusiastic enough about it to at least learn one dialect of Pont and attempt to encourage one or two other people to do likewise. And from there, we'll have to wait and see. Will it become yet another valuable asset, or will it become another dead language? Only time will tell.